Hi, folks. Welcome back. Here we are with our next recorded lecture. I'm your instructor, Victor Fabiana Bundesguerra, and we are in Philosophy 110, Introduction to Philosophy. We're still in our unit of applied ethics. This is our last issue that we're considering, namely the topic of abortion. With that said, let's go ahead and get started and start with, oh, I accidentally created a new slide there. Let's go ahead and start this slideshow. That's what I meant to do. Okay. So outline, we're going to get some U.S. history on abortion. Obviously, there was something that changed rather recently with the Dobbs case. We're going to go ahead and look at some common philosophical objections to abortion. We're going to look at Thomson's strategy, and dealing with the extreme view according to her. We'll also look at less extreme view, as we're also going to look at the idea of having to be a good Samaritan versus being a minimally decent Samaritan according to her. So a lot to consider here. Let's go ahead and get into it with a little history lesson. We're not going to get through everything here, by the way, on this recorded lecture. We'll go ahead and finish on the next one. So, history of abortion in the United States. It's not a controversial thing to say that people that have been pro-abortion or pro-choice, such as Madame Restell, as early as the mid-1800s, have been depicted somewhat negatively in some depictions of media. So this is not anything new, first and foremost. With that said, let's go ahead and get into maybe some actual laws. So after the U.S. Revolution, the American Revolution, we applied what was called English common law, which is that abortion was not allowed after quickening. Quickening was a very old school term. It basically means when the fetus starts moving around, which yeah, I guess that's just what it means. It's about 15 to 20 weeks. I'm not sure what the relevance to that might be, but according to English common law, we thought that was an important signifier, an important threshold. In the 1820s, individual states start passing laws against abortion, some targeting apothecaries for selling poison to women, others making abortion post-quickening a felony and a misdemeanor before. So it was very much up to the states. It was very much up to the states. In 1860s, there was a law of criminalization of abortion. The criminalization of abortion accelerated, so we got more intense punishments if you went through this procedure. In 1873, Anthony Comstock founded the New York Society for the Suppression of Vice. He was a very religious man. Later that year, he helped pass the Comstock Law, which made it illegal to distribute info on abortion. So we didn't want any info, any education regarding that. And a lot of other states followed after Comstock did that in New York. In the late 1800s, there was about 2 million performed annually. In 1902, the Journal of the American Medical Association advocated that women must confess to their sins if they suffered from abortion complications in order to get health care. This idea here was essentially to shame women. And in the 1920s, about 15,000 women died each year from abortion. Fast forward to about 1967, abortion is a felony in 49 states, and DC was. The source was When Abortion Was a Crime. That book you can get, it was published in 2003, published by Leslie Reagan, authored by Leslie Reagan. Of course, this is not it, right? We got more. Here on the right, we see a mass-produced ad by Right to Life being anti-abortion. So, it's trying to elicit any emotional response there. That advertisement was called Who Killed Junior? In 1970, Hawaii and then New York decriminalized abortions before 20 weeks. So that was a movement for, or a win for, the pro-choice faction, pro-choice side. And in 1973, women and pro-choicers had their biggest victory in the landmark case of Roe v. Wade, which said that women can get abortions in the first trimester, states can regulate procedure in the second trimester, and forbid it in the third trimester when the fetus is viable, meaning that it can live and exist outside the woman's belly, outside the woman's womb, to be more specific, of course. And this was a federal protection. So this was a federal protection. In 1976, the Hyde Amendment was added, and basically says that we can't use federal funds or Medicaid for abortion. There are some exceptions, of course, namely the exceptions of rape, incest, and when the woman's life is in danger. In 1981, we have Belotti versus Baird, another very big landmark case, which said that minors can petition to have an abortion without parental consent. Very important for 16, 17-year-olds or just potential teen mothers. In 1992, Planned Parenthood, there was another case, Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and the court upheld Roe v. Wade, the decision, and it upholds 24-hour waiting periods and parental consent laws. In 1933 and 1994, Dr. David Gunn, Dr. George Tiller, and Dr. Jordan Bayard, Britain, were all killed and shot by abortion protesters. So they were very famous or infamous doctors that offered abortion services, and they advertised their abortion services. So they were murdered, they were killed. In 1997, 2 bombs go off in an abortion clinic in Atlanta. Oh. In 2003, 2007, George W. Bush signs the partial birth abortion ban. And it is upheld by Supreme Court in 2007, prompting states to pass their own laws, which basically says that there which was another restriction. Oh, apparently I misspoke. Dr. Tiller survived in 1993, but then they were shot again in 2009, and that time they did die. So unfortunately, they didn't survive the second time. In 2015, there was a shooting at Planned Parenthood at Colorado Springs. That resulted in 3 deaths and others injured. In February 2016, then President Donald Trump said that they wanted to end funding for Planned Parenthood because they, gave abortion services as well as other services. And finally, probably the last big thing to sort of note in this very, very brief history, which I've given you, was that in 2022, in the Dobbs versus Jackson case, that overturned Roe v. Wade. So there was no longer a federal protection to give women the right to abortion within the first trimester. It is very much just up to the states now. So here are some common philosophical objections to abortion. To begin with, many rely on the idea that the fetus is a human who is therefore entitled to human rights from the moment of conception when the sperm meets the egg. So we can put that as premise 1, right? A fetus is human from the moment of conception. Premise 2, killing a human is murder. Premise 3, abortion is the killing of a fetus. Conclusion, abortion is murder. It's bad. You don't want to do it. That's a very common philosophical objection to abortion. But the question is, right, that a lot of philosophers have asked, and as we're going to see, Thomson is going to ask this as well. Why should we accept one? Why should we accept that the fetus is a human from the moment of conception? To begin with, it's also important to note that according to medical experts, the American Medical Association, pregnancy doesn't actually begin at the moment of conception. Pregnancy actually begins at implantation when the fetus sticks to the uterus's wall. Just keep that in mind. So there doesn't seem to be a reason to consider a fetus a human at that moment. But here's an argument as to why you might. Premise 1, the development of a fetus is continuous. Premise 2, choosing a point in this continuous development in which the fetus is considered a human is arbitrary. Why choose 1 day and 1 hour? That's when you can choose 1 day and 2 hours. It's arbitrary, and you don't want to do arbitrary things. Arbitrary decisions are wrong, the argument goes. So, because we don't want to be arbitrary, we don't want to consider the fetus a human at day 1 or day 2 or day 3 and then be accused of being arbitrary. It's better to just be as principled as possible, okay, according to pro-lifers, and consider the fetus a human from the moment of conception at the earliest possible moment, according to them. Now, there are many, many, many replies to this, and many can attack whether 1, 2, or 3 are valid, right? Whether 1, 2, or 3 are true, or whether the conclusion follows from the premises 1, 2, and 3, whether the argument is valid. Thomson herself attacks the validity. She basically says that, look, yes, the progression of a fetus to a human is continuous, But you wouldn't, according to her, consider an acorn to be a tree, even though the development from an acorn to a tree is continuous. You would see an acorn, according to her, and say that it's rightly an acorn, that it is not a tree. If anything, it is the seed of a tree, but it is not a tree. Similarly, a fetus is not a human, using that argument from analogy. Still, let's go ahead. And again, there's an argument attacking the validity, saying that the conclusion doesn't follow from those premises. She's not saying any of those premises are incorrect. She's just saying the conclusion doesn't follow, and she used that analogy. But she says in her article, right, yeah, Defense of Abortion, let's just go ahead and accept premise one, right? That a fetus is indeed a human from the moment of conception. Let's just go ahead and accept that for the moment. How would the rest of the argument even go? That abortion is wrong? Are we assuming, according to her, that a human's right to life outweighs another human's right to their own body? Are we assuming that? Probably, she says, if you're a pro-lifer, and against abortion, you probably are assuming that, she says. But now consider the following situation, the following analogy. You wake up in the morning and find yourself back to back in bed with an unconscious violinist, a famous unconscious violinist. He has been found to have a fatal kidney ailment, and the Society of Music Lovers has canvassed all the available medical records and found that you alone, only you, have the right blood type to help. They have therefore kidnapped you, and last night the violinist's circulatory system was plugged into yours. So you guys are connected through these tubes, so that your kidneys can be used to extract poisons from his blood as well as your own. If you unplug yourself, you will kill him. But never mind, they say. Don't worry. It's only for 9 months. By then, he will have recovered from his ailment and can safely be unplugged. The question is, the violinist is a human at the beginning of those 9 months. They're a human. We're assuming that. The violinist has a right to life, but you also have a right to your own body and to make sure that other people don't have access to your body without your consent, even if they need your body and its fluids and its nutrients and its blood to live. The question that she has now is that what's more important, the violinist's right to live or your right to your body? Or in other words, are you morally required to give your body to the violinist so that they may live? She says no. In this situation, your right to your body and its resources overrides the violinist's right to live. Of course, you don't want to actively kill the violinist, right? If you were to stab them, then you will be violating the violinist's right to live. But you don't have to help the violinist. You don't have to offer them your resources. Now, at this point, go ahead and watch this video. It'll make the metaphor a little more explicit in case you couldn't guess what's going on. The violinist, of course, in this situation is the fetus. This is a short video. It's about 3 minutes and mostly just recaps what was going on here. So there's many levels to this analogy, right? The kidnapping, that can be analogous to a rape or unplanned pregnancy. Being bedridden can be analogous to tough and difficult pregnancies. The death of the donor, right? The death of the person on the left, the person giving the stuff, the blood, that could be seen as being analogous to the death of the mother. But with that said, right, the question I want to leave this recorded lecture with, right, to you, asking you folks is, Thomson believes, and she's going to argue in the next recorded lecture, that these two situations, woman being pregnant, day one, is morally the same. Morally the same. There's no moral difference between that and you being kidnapped and plugged into a violinist, and the violinist needing you to live. They are morally the same, that there's no moral distinction between the two. The question is, do you agree? Do you agree that the two situations are the same? And if you do think they're the same, what's the right thing to do? And if they're not the same, what's the difference? Because as we're going to see in the next record lecture, Thomson's going to do a pretty good job arguing that they are actually the same. But we'll go ahead and see that next time. Until then, folks, take care. See you next time.